Hi, this is Eternal King here, bringing you another LOR video today. So I basically just wanted to give a post-holiday update on the state of LOR, and the reality is nothing has changed. Galio Elder Dragon is still the best standard deck. There is no reason to play anything else. The way that this deck is constructed, it's also entirely unnerfable. There's nothing in this deck that is exceptionally powerful. I don't imagine that you would want to, for example, nerf Enraged Fire Splitter. You're not going to nerf Sign In. You're not going to nerf Wind Singer or Galio or Mahira or Maid Seeker or the Formidable Package. I don't see anything in this deck that is worthy of a nerf. I don't think you nerf Morgana as a 3/4 for 5 mana. What are you going to do? Make her a 2/4? I don't think so. So again, that is standard. Any streamer that tells you that that isn't standard right now, that this isn't the only deck you should be playing, is essentially lying to you. Standard is all about presenting the most beef per tempo, and this deck presents the most beef per tempo. There's no reason to play anything else. Now, Eternal season doesn't open until February. So we don't know exactly how the new cards are going to impact the Eternal meta, but that is still wide open. There are a million deck concepts that are still available for people to experiment with. There are a million, again, we don't know where Mordekaiser is going to land. Mordekaiser is a card, for example, that might, have a very big splash in Eternal. Because currently the best Shadow Isles deck is Thresh Nasus with its Atrocity Win Con. But again, we don't know if Mordekaiser, kind of value soup stuff is actually going to present a possible threat to Thresh Nasus. There are certain card combinations and certain interactions that simply aren't available in Standard that could, might open up Mordekaiser to be, do very well in the Eternal format. So that's very exciting. Elder Dragon is the more obvious choice. Elder Dragon in a Ramp Shell. Elder Dragon in a Nora deck. With Broadmane, Elder Dragon, again, in a muscle kind of mid-range Galio Shell. We just don't know how those things are going to do into the established Eternal meta. Things like a Zero Relia, of course, being very good in Eternal. Things like Ziggs Poppy being very good in Eternal. We do not yet know how these new cards are going to impact that meta. And that's kind of where the excitement lies. Standard is set in stone. There's nothing that can be done for Standard. Standard can't be saved. Standard can't be made an interesting format. It doesn't matter how much Sunny or Mogwai kind of lie to you into thinking that it's a dynamic format with interesting things happening. The reality is that it's simply not. It is set in stone. It has been, if you look at the stats at like November, and then you look at the stats now in January, 3 months have gone by, it has not moved an inch from the sort of Galio Elder Dragon meta, the one deck meta that we have in Standard right now. But Eternal, wide open. Absolutely no clue what's gonna be good, what's gonna work. Do we see a top tier Volibear deck? I don't know. Volibear Elder Dragon. Do we see a top tier Morgana deck in Eternal? We simply don't know. Again, there are interesting interactions with the likes of Ezreal that simply does not available in Standard. So, Morgana, how well will she do? And then, of course, Mordekaiser kind of value soup stuff. How well will that do? We just don't know. And that's kind of where the excitement lies. Absolutely. So until then, until we start seeing those massive statistical switches up in a format that is, as diverse and interesting as Eternal, which will happen in February, there's very little for me to report on. Standard is the exact same as it always has been. It will not move. People who are hoping that the balance patch that will come in February when Eternal opens up will do something for Standard, it's very unlikely. I'm going to be honest, because again, we just went through the list for Elder Dragon Galio, and there's nothing there that's nerfable. There's nothing there that's worth changing. So the one thing that you can look forward to, which is the same thing that I've been looking forward to for the last, since the expansion dropped, which is the release of the Eternal Ladder. And the subsequent, and what happens after the release of Eternal Ladder is that we get a flood of new deck concepts with the new champions, and seeing how statistically they measure up to what's already there, namely Azir Aurelia, kind of being one of the decks to beat. Always will be in the Eternal format, because it's one of the best decks in the game since the buff to Desert's Wrath. So it'll be interesting to see how, like, will Morgana, for example, be a problem for this deck? Possibly. She has lifesteal. But then, again, you can't really slow down the extra attacks. So maybe Morgana won't be the best counter into that, or Mordekaiser. Or Elder Dragon. So maybe Azir Aurelia will do really well into that. I'm kind of curious to see statistically how that plays out. Ziggs Poppy, that sort of thing. So this is Eternal King signing out. Again, standard, locked in. It'll be locked in pretty hard even in February when the balance patch drops. It'll do minimal changes to that format. Eternal, wide open. So look forward to that in February. This is Eternal King signing out.